Meanwhile, Rose was living her best life. The money David gave her allowed her to live comfortably, and she flaunted her new lifestyle shamelessly. She knew Mary was suffering, and that knowledge gave her a twisted sense of satisfaction. Rose continued manipulating David, pretending to be humble and grateful, while secretly enjoying every bit of Mary's misery. As time passed, Rose found herself developing feelings for David, feelings she hadn't expected. What started as a plan to secure money and control over him was now turning into something deeper. She couldn't deny her growing attachment to him. Whenever David showered her with gifts and attention, Rose's heart softened. Her plan to manipulate him was slowly turning into genuine affection. The doctor, however, noticed the change in Rose's behavior. She was no longer fully focused on their original scheme. Instead of keeping her eyes on the goal of getting David's money, Rose seemed to be falling for him. The doctor, frustrated, confronted Rose one evening. "What's happening? You are losing focus. This was never about falling in love. We have a deal. You get close to David for money, not for romance." Rose, feeling cornered, tried to stay calm. "I know what we agreed on, but things have changed. David is more than just a target now. I didn't plan for this, but I care about him. I love him." The doctor was furious. "You care about him? Have you forgotten why we started this in the first place? You are risking everything. Do you think he will really choose you over Mary forever? He will figure out what's going on eventually. We need to get back on track, or all of this will blow up in our faces." Despite the doctor's warnings, Rose continued to grow closer to David. She no longer viewed their plan as just a scheme to make money. Now she wanted more. She desired to be the woman in David's life permanently, not just a fleeting distraction. This change in Rose's motive made the doctor feel betrayed and concerned. He began thinking of ways to protect himself while still getting the money he craved. Rose was no longer a dependable partner in their plot, and the tension between them escalated with each passing day. While Rose was consumed by a newfound feeling for David, the doctor was busy devising his next move. He knew that if he didn't act soon, he might lose everything. Meanwhile, Rose was blinded by her emotions, making her vulnerable to the consequences that were looming. One day, David was not home and Mary went into labor. She managed to drive to the hospital herself. Mary was overjoyed when she gave birth to a healthy baby boy. She hoped the arrival of their child would soften David's heart and bring him back to his senses. Despite everything, she believed he would eventually come around and take responsibility as a father. With excitement, she tried calling David to share the good news, but he didn't answer her calls. Disappointed, Mary sent him a message informing him about the birth of their son. When David finally replied, his voice was cold and uncaring. He simply said, "Congratulations on the birth of your boy. Call the father. I'm not responsible for your child." Mary was heartbroken. She couldn't believe how far things had deteriorated. The man she once loved and respected was now denying their child and refusing to be part of their lives. She wept bitterly, wondering what had happened to the man she had married. Meanwhile, Rose continued to push her agenda. She felt it was time for David to fully commit to her. She wanted more than just the money and attention he was giving her. He wanted the title of wife and the security that came with it. One evening, she sat David down and said, "I think it's time for us to get married. I've been patient and I've done everything you've asked. It's time you made me your wife." But David wasn't ready for such a big decision. He hesitated and said, "Let's take things slow, Rose. We don't need to rush into marriage. We are doing fine as we are." His response left Rose feeling disappointed and frustrated. Despite all her efforts, she realized she was still just the other woman in his life. Determined not to give up, Rose decided to seek help from the native doctor once again. She believed stronger charms would ensure David had no choice but to marry her, securing her a share of his wealth if things went wrong in the future. When she arrived at the native doctor's place, she explained her situation. The native doctor listened carefully and said, "This time, the charm you are asking for is much more dangerous. It will work, but there is a serious condition. You must make sure David never lays eyes on his child. If he sees the child, everything will backfire and disaster will strike strike, your life will be ruined. A chill ran down Rose's spine, but her desperation outweighed her fear. She agreed to follow the native doctor's instructions. She was willing to do whatever it took to make David's ours, even if it meant keeping him away from his own child. As Rose left the native doctor's place, her mind raced. She knew she was treading dangerous ground, but felt she couldn't turn back now. She was too deep in her schemes. All she could think about was how close she was to getting everything she wanted. Determined, she focused on keeping David under her control no matter the cost. As the days passed, Rose put her plan into action. She became even more possessive of David, ensuring he stayed distracted and away from anything that could lead him back to Mary or their child. She couldn't afford any mistakes now, as her future depended on it. One evening, Rose overheard a conversation revealing a plan that threatened to destroy everything she had worked for. The doctor and his wife, Elizabeth, had been secretly plotting to take the twins and run away, leaving Rose behind. Apparently, Elizabeth heard that the doctor now have money, so she found her way back talking to the doctor. Furious and betrayed, Rose knew she had to act fast before they carried out their plan. Without delay, she started plotting against them. One day, when she arrived at the doctor's house unexpectedly, she found the doctor and Elizabeth discussing their escape. Without giving them a chance to explain, Rose raised the gun she had been keeping for emergencies and shot them both, killing them instantly. Cold and unbothered, she quickly wiped away any evidence linking her to the crime. Rose knew there was no one to leave the twins with. She quickly got a live-in child carer to stay with the twins and care for them. Later, Rose went to David's house, acting as if nothing had happened. She played the role of a loving partner, and David didn't suspect a thing, too preoccupied with his daily life to notice any change in her behavior. But fate had other plans. One afternoon, David took a break from his busy routine and went to a small restaurant he hadn't visited in a while. As he waited for his order, he spotted a familiar face across the street. It was Mary, holding their baby boy. The sight of his son hit David like a lightning bolt. In that moment, everything changed. It was as if a forge lifted from his mind, and he realized all the terrible mistakes he had made. The love for his child flooded back, breaking the old Rose had over him. Overcome with guilt, David rushed to Mary, begging for forgiveness. "Mary, I'm so sorry for everything I've done. Please forgive me. Please, give me a chance to make things right," he pleaded. But Mary, still hurt by all the pain he had caused, turned away with tears in her eyes. She didn't want to hear any more excuses or promises. She had suffered enough and wasn't ready to trust David again. She held her son close and walked away, leaving David standing there, devastated. When David returned home, his mind was in turmoil. The weight of his actions bore down on him. To his surprise, he found Rose sitting comfortably in his living room. But this time, instead of feeling drawn to her, he felt nothing but disgust and anger. "What are you doing here, Rose?" David demanded coldly. Sensing something had changed, Rose froze. The power she once held over him was gone. She tried to smile and act innocent, but deep down, she knew the spell had been broken. "You are not welcome here, Rose. Pack your things and get out. I don't want to see you again," David said firmly. Rose's worst fears had come true. Desperate, she tried to argue, but David wasn't listening. With no other choice, Rose packed her belongings and left humiliated. As she walked out, she realized that everything she had schemed for had fallen apart. David stood alone, filled with regrets, but also with a renewed sense of purpose. He knew he had to work hard to win Mary's trust back and rebuild his family. This time, he vowed to be a better man, free from deceit. Meanwhile, as Rose returned home, a security guard approached her. "Madam, the police are on their way," he said quietly. Rose knew they had discovered the murders. Her lies had finally caught up with her, and now there was no escape. Looking around at the luxurious surroundings that had once been her pride, Rose realized it was all meaningless now. In her twisted mind, she convinced herself that if she couldn't have control, she wouldn't let anyone else take it away, especially not the police. In a daze, Rose walked to where her twins were playing, completely unaware of the darkness clouding their mother's hearts. She stood over there, tears streaming down her face, and she whispered, "I'm so sorry. Mommy can't leave you to suffer in this cruel world." Her hands shook as she picked up the gun she had hidden in a drawer. In her act of desperation and madness, Rose pulled the trigger. The sound echoed through the house, leaving nothing but silence behind. With trembling hands, eyes blurred with tears, she then turned the gun on herself, unable to bear the consequences of her actions. Just as the police broke down the door, it was already too late. Rose lay lifeless on the floor beside her innocent children, the tragic result of a life consumed by greed and manipulation. When news of Rose's death spread, David was struck by a deep sense of guilt and sorrow. Though he had long separated himself from Rose, the horror of what had happened weighed heavily on him. He knew now more than ever that he needed to mend the broken pieces of his life and heal the wounds he had caused. The first step was to make things right with Mary. Determined to fix his mistakes, David went to Mary's father's house. When he arrived, the elderly man greeted him with a cold, stern expression. "What do you want, David? Have you two caused enough pain? Have you two done enough for my daughter and grandson?" he asked, his voice heavy with disappointment. David's eyes filled with regret as he knelt before Mary's father. "I know I've failed. I don't deserve anyone's forgiveness, but please, I'm begging you to help me. I love Mary and our son more than anything. I let my selfishness blind me, and I lost sight of what truly matters. I need to make things right," he pleaded, his voice trembling with sincerity. Mary's father looked at him for a long moment, searching for any sign of genuine remorse. Finally, he sighed and placed a hand on David's shoulder. "You've caused a lot of harm, David, but I believe everyone deserves a chance to redeem themselves. I will talk to Mary, but the rest is up to you. You need to prove to her that you have truly changed and you are willing to put your family first." Tears filled David's eyes as he nodded gratefully. "Thank you, sir. I won't take this chance for granted. I will do whatever it takes to earn Mary's trust and be the father and husband they both deserve," he vowed. As they left, a glimmer of hope flickered in David's heart. He knew it wouldn't be easy to regain Mary's love and trust, but he was determined to fight for his family. No longer driven by pride or selfish desires, David was ready to build a future based on love, honesty, and commitment. For the first time in a long while, he felt like he was on the right path, one that could finally lead him back to the people who truly mattered most. David spent the following days reflecting on everything that had happened. He knew he had hurt Mary deeply and didn't expect forgiveness easily. He planned carefully, understanding that words alone wouldn't be enough to mend the broken trust. He needed to show through his actions that he was genuinely committed to changing and prioritizing his family. One afternoon, David decided to visit Mary at her father's house again. He brought along gifts for their sons and some flowers for Mary, hoping it would be a small gesture to show his sincerity. As he approached the door, his heart pounded in his chest. He was nervous, unsure if she would even agree to see him. When Mary's father opened the door, he gave a small nod, indicating that Mary was willing to talk. David took a deep breath and stepped inside. Mary was sitting on the couch, holding their baby boy, looking tired but still as graceful as ever. Her face was calm, but her eyes held a mix of emotions, hurt, anger, and a glimmer of hope. David slowly walked toward her and knelt down, placing the gifts on the table beside her. "Mary, I know I have been a terrible husband and father. I let greed, foolishness, and pride guide me instead of love and wisdom. I hurt you in ways I can never fully make up for, but I'm here today to ask for one last chance chance to make things right. I want to be the man you and our son deserve, the man I should have been from the start." Mary listened quietly, her eyes softening as she saw the sincerity in David's face. She had always loved him deeply, but the betrayal and pain she endured made it hard to trust him again. However, seeing him humbled and genuinely remorseful tugged at her heart. She looked down at their son, who reached out his tiny hands towards David, and she knew deep inside that their family deserved a chance to heal. "I won't lie, David. It's not easy to just forgive everything and pretend like the past didn't happen, but I can see that you are really trying. You are willing to change, and that means something to me," Mary said softly, her voice filled with both caution and warmth. "I'm willing to come back, but only if you prove that you are serious about putting your family first." Tears welled up in David's eyes as he realized that Mary was giving him the opportunity he had prayed for. He nodded eagerly. "I promise, Mary, I will work every day to show you that you and our son are my top priority. I won't let you down again." After a long conversation, they decided it was time to rebuild their lives together. Mary packed her things and they returned home as a family. For the first time in a long while, their house was filled with warmth and hope. David was determined to make every moment count, from being there for their son to making sure Mary felt valued and loved. In the weeks that followed, David proved his commitment through small, meaningful gestures, helping with the baby, spending quality time together, and supporting Mary in every way possible. He even encouraged her to go back to work, understanding how much she had sacrificed for the family. Mary's heart slowly began to heal as she saw how much David had truly changed. They talked openly about the past, addressing their pain and mistakes, but also focusing on building a stronger foundation for the future. Their life, once nearly destroyed, was rekindling into something deeper and more resilient. Their journey was not without its challenges, but this time they faced them together as a united front. David no longer chased after temporary pleasures or allowed himself to be swayed by manipulation. His love for Mary and their son guided every decision he made. In return, Mary found herself falling in love with him all over again. As they settled into a new chapter of their lives, there was a sense of peace that hadn't existed before. They were a family again, stronger than ever and determined to protect the bond they had nearly lost. David and Mary knew that love, trust, and commitment were the keys to their happiness, and this time they weren't going to let anything come between them. Beautiful people, this is a long dramatic story but filled with a lot of moral lesson. What did you learn from this story? Please share with us in the comment section, and if you are still watching at this point, please comment "I watched till the end." Here is the end of the story. Thank you so much for watching. I will see you in another story. Stay blessed and positive always. Kisses. I love you. Yes, you that you are listening right now. Do well to like, subscribe, and share with family and friends. Thank you.